Andreas Salomé, the first female psychoanalyst who expressed her passion for freedom at every opportunity with her contributions to the intellectual world with her books, articles and ideas, and was always told through the eyes of others she is one of the women whom patriarchal history talks about a lot but gives no information about, who has been subjected to the brutal lynching of masculine history, who is remembered for the relationships she established with intellectual men in the century in which she lived, and who is shown as the cause of all the negativities experienced by these men, and who has been treated most unfairly in history. The century he lived in, people did not care much about Salomé, the poet, writer, psychoanalyst, philosopher who thought, questioned, produced, other than her definition of seductive woman. Her peers, on the other hand, only criticized her for the feminist way of thinking of her time and for not speaking out about women. Salomé, I cling to memories, but never to a man. She was a female philosopher whom the patriarchy she challenged with her words tried to objectify as if in revenge. Andreas Salomé, a Sephardic Jew whose family emigrated to Russia, was born in St. Petersburg on February 12, 1861, the daughter of Gustav Ludwig von Salomé, 1807–1878, and Louise von Salomé, 1823–1913. Lou was their only daughter. They had 5 sons. As the youngest of 6 children, he grew up in a wealthy and cultured family. All the children of the family were learning Russian, German and French. Salomé was allowed to attend her siblings' classes. Born into a Protestant family, Salomé grew up resentful of the Reformed Church and the Orthodox Protestant priest Hermann Dalton. Refusing to be confirmed by Dalton, he officially left the church at age 16. He did not accept strict religious rules in his childhood. For him, God was someone to be friends with, discuss with, and even sleep next to. He became interested in human relations at a very early age. He was a dreamer. She was far from the image of the woman her mother wanted to see. The first person who determined the course of his life was Hendrik Gillett, a priest 25 years his senior. St. He was fascinated by the sermons of the Dutch priest Hendrik Gillett, who was known as Dalton's rival in St. Petersburg. Gillett took him on as a student, taking an interest in theology, philosophy, world religions, and French and German literature. Together they studied countless writers, philosophers, theological and religious subjects, and all of this wide-ranging research formed the basis of their intellectual encounters with many well-known thinkers of their time. He became interested in philosophy and literature through his discussions with Gillett. It is said that Gillett had this young woman, whose ideas he admired, write the text of some Sunday services. Following her father's death in 1879, Salomé and her mother went to Zurich so that Salomé could receive a university education as a guest student. In her country, women were prohibited from receiving higher education. The University of Zurich was one of the few schools that accepted female students at that time. Many women working in the intellectual field in Russia were educated at the University of Zurich during this period. Here Salomé studied theology, philosophy, and art history. During this time, Salomé's physical health was deteriorating due to lung disease, causing her to cough up blood. Because of this, she was instructed to heal in warmer climates. In February 1882, Salomé and her mother went to Rome. He wrote his first novel, My Struggle with God, at the age of 24. In Italy, she was a roommate with the writer Maldivia von Meisenbergu, who was a close friend of her mother. Maldivia became for Salomé the embodiment of the idea that it is a woman's right and duty to live a free life. At a literary salon in the city, Salomé met the writer Paul Rie. Rie proposed to her. Salomé rejected this offer and suggested that she and another man live and study together as brothers, thus establishing an academic commune. Rie accepted the idea and suggested that his friend Friedrich Nietzsche join them. Thus, she met Friedrich Nietzsche here and rejected Nietzsche's marriage proposal, who was greatly impressed by their conversations on philosophy and theology. This one-sided love story that inspired Nietzsche was the subject of Irving D. Yalom's novels, When Nietzsche Cried, and Lance Olson's Nietzsche's Kisses. Photographed in Jules Bonnet's studio in Lucerne in 1882. Lou von Salome, Paul Rie and Friedrich Nietzsche. Salome considered bodily attraction to marriage or a fidelity relationship as limiting freedom, so she avoided such relationships throughout her life. The intellectual friendship he wanted was simply to unravel the mystery of life and the resonance of freedom. According to Salome, marriage is the murderer of love. Married spouses are insignificant to each other. Love is quite inferior to friendship. Friendship must be protected from the risk of extinction by turning into love or, even worse, into sexuality, because there is no way from bodily passion to spiritual sympathy, but from the second to the first one can go. Although there are thousands of definitions of love, Lou Salome is one of the names that questions love in the bravest way and brings it the most striking definition. Later, linguist Friedrich Karl Andreas entered his life. Friedrich Karl was afraid of Andreas' suicide threat and accepted Andreas' marriage proposal. Despite Salome's opposition to marriage in her open affairs with other men, Salome and Andreas remained married from 1887 until her death in 1930. According to Salome, the main thing was the unity of minds, not bodies. Unless this unity was achieved, it was meaningless to live anything. In May 1897, he met Rilke in Munich, who had been introduced to him by Jacob Wassermann. While Rilke was only 21, he was 37 years old. For the poet, Lou was a divine being. She taught him to read Tolstoy, who he would later meet, and Pushkin in Russian. She introduced him to patrons and other people in the arts, and she remained Rilke's advisor, confidant, and muse throughout his adult life. The love between the poet and Lou lasted 3 years, and then, as can be seen from their correspondence, turned into a friendship that would last until Rilke's death. In 1937, Freud spoke of Salome's relationship with Rilke. She was both the muse and the attentive mother of the great poet. Salome became interested in psychology at the age of 50 in the early 1900s and attended the Weimar Psychoanalytical Congress. It was at this time that he crossed paths with Freud. After a while, she moved to Vienna and wrote a letter to Freud, offering to work together. When he started working with Freud, the issue that fascinated him the most was narcissism. Describing dealing with the subject as her special passion, Salome's most well-known and original production of this period was Erotic. In her work consisting of 4 articles on love between men and women, she argued that love is not directed towards a man or a woman. According to Salome, in love, we are not filled with others as we think. We are full of ourselves, our own situation. We hug ourselves, not others. Love strives to its own death. If love abandons this goal, it lives as an unfulfilled effort. For Salome, fidelity plays an important role in the destruction of love itself by hindering freedom. Freud describes himself in the following sentences: a formidable intelligence. Anyone who approached him was very strongly impressed by the sincerity and harmony of his presence. He would realize that she had none of the feminine weaknesses, or even most human weaknesses, and that she had overcome them throughout her life. He spent his time in the intellectual centers of the century: Petersburg, Vienna, Berlin, Munich and Paris. A 76-year-old life devoted to art, writing and philosophy, novels, poems, plays, philosophical writings, scientific studies, a woman devoted to thinking, writing and living. Perhaps Salome's biggest misfortune was that, although she should have deserved to be remembered for what she did in the field of philosophy and thought, she was subjected to the unconventional judgments of men in the news of the male-dominated intellectual world. Lou Andreas Salome considered herself equal to the other person in all human relations, whether with men or women. She had never thought that she had anything less than men. When, at 17, he wrote a daring letter to the popular clergyman Father Hendrik Gillett, expressing his desire to take lessons from him, or when, at 21, he devised a model of intellectual triad life with Paul Rie and Nietzsche, he saw himself as on an equal footing with these men.